An object from another star system entered our solar system, and the internet wanted it to be a spaceship. That sentence sounds almost too modern to be real. A dark object crosses the border of the solar system, not born under the sun, not moving like the familiar rocks and comets that belong to our neighborhood, and before the dust around it can even be fully measured, the imagination of Earth starts building engines onto it. A comet becomes a craft. A coma becomes camouflage. A tail becomes exhaust. A strange orbit becomes a mission plan. A chemical measurement becomes a clue from some hidden machine. The object has not spoken, has not signaled, has not maneuvered, has not revealed a surface of metal or geometry or design, but it has arrived from outside, and for many people that is enough to make the mind jump, because interstellar is not a neutral word, it has weight. It carries loneliness, distance, fear and hope. It turns a faint moving point in a telescope image into a mirror for everything human beings want the universe to say back to us. We have spent generations asking whether anyone is out there. We have built radio telescopes, sent probes, mapped exoplanets, studied atmospheres, and listened to empty sky. Then a body from beyond the sun appears, and the old question rushes in before the evidence has time to breathe. Could it be artificial? Could it be a probe? Could it be watching us? Could this be the thing science fiction promised? That curiosity is not the problem. It is not stupid to wonder. It is not embarrassing to feel the pull of the idea. A real alien artifact moving through the solar system would be one of the greatest discoveries in human history. It would change science, culture, religion, philosophy, and the story human beings tell themselves about their place in the dark. Anyone who says that question has no emotional power is not being honest. The problem begins when the wish outruns the evidence. 3I Atlas is not boring. It is not ordinary. It is not the kind of object that should be waved away with a shrug. It is rare, cold, old, and physically dramatic. It came from beyond the solar system. It is only the third confirmed interstellar object ever identified. It follows a hyperbolic path, which means it is not trapped by the sun. It has a coma. It has a tail. It releases gas and dust as sunlight warms its frozen material. It contains chemical clues that may not match the familiar pattern of many comets born in our own system. That is already extraordinary. But extraordinary does not mean engineered. The evidence points not to a spaceship, but to an interstellar comet. A natural object from another planetary system carrying ice, dust, gases, and molecules from a place we have never visited and may never identify. The alien ship fantasy is seductive because it gives the object intent. It imagines a builder, a sender, a mission, a secret. But the comet story may be larger in a colder way. It gives the object history. A ship would mean someone came. A comet means something was thrown out of another system, thrown across the spaces between stars, thrown into the sun's light for one brief passage before it leaves again. That is not a smaller story, it is a more ancient one. The temptation is easy to understand. We have seen this before. When Oumuamua crossed the solar system in 2017, it arrived too quickly and left too soon. It was small, faint, strange, and difficult to study. It did not show a clear cometary coma in the observations available at the time. Its brightness changed in a way that suggested an unusual shape or surface. It had a small non-gravitational acceleration that scientists argued about. Natural explanations were proposed. But the object had already left, and the missing data became fertile ground for speculation. The public learned a dangerous habit from Oumuamua. It learned that interstellar objects are places where mystery can be stretched. A gap in measurement becomes an opening. A faint image becomes a screen. A strange motion becomes a plot. The less we know, the more some people feel allowed to invent. Then came 2I Borisov. That object looked far more like a comet. It had gas, dust, a coma, a tail, and activity that fit the behavior of an icy body warmed by the sun. It was still from another star system, still breathtaking, still a natural messenger from beyond our neighborhood. But it did not feed the spacecraft fantasy in the same way, because it gave astronomers exactly the kind of evidence that makes the word comet appropriate. 3I Atlas arrives with the memory of both objects hanging over it. The public remembers the mystery of Oumuamua more strongly than the discipline of Borisov. A new interstellar object appears, and the old story returns. The same suspicion, the same hunger and race to make the object more artificial than the data allows. But 3I Atlas is not a blank screen. It is active. It has the signs of cometary behavior. It has a coma, the cloud of gas and dust released as the object warms. It's the tail sunlight in the solar wind. It has molecules in its coma. It has dust around a nucleus that remains partly hidden inside its own activity. It was observed by multiple telescopes and spacecraft from different places and at different wavelengths. The more observers looked, the more the object behaved like a comet from another star system, not a normal comet in the ordinary local sense, a foreign comet. That distinction matters. Calling 3I Atlas a comet does not make it familiar. It means its behavior fits the physical class of icy bodies that release gas and dust when heated. It does not mean we know every detail. It does not mean its chemistry is boring. It does not mean it formed like every comet in our own system. It means the evidence points to natural physics before it points to technology. The alien ship claim has to do something harder. It has to explain why a spacecraft would appear with comet-like activity, comet-like gas, comet-like dust, comet-like tail structure, and comet-like chemical release, while showing no artificial signal, no resolved engineered surface, no clear propulsion, and no controlled maneuver that natural comet physics cannot explain. That is a heavy burden. The burden is not carried by excitement, it is not carried by the word interstellar, it is not carried by a strange chemical ratio, it is not carried by a dramatic thumbnail, it has to be carried by evidence. So far, the evidence does not carry it. This does not mean science has crushed the wonder. It means the wonder has been moved to where it belongs. The real question is not why 3I Atlas is not a spaceship. The real question is what kind of planetary system made this object, froze these molecules into it, ejected it into the galaxy, and sent it across our sky by accident. That question is harder to sell in one word. It does not have the instant electricity of Alien, but it may be more profound. It takes the object out of the fantasy of contact and places it inside the machinery of planet formation. It asks us to think not about a pilot but about a birthplace, not about a mission but about an origin, not about hidden intent, but about matter moving between stars. Imagine the object before we named it. No headline, no debate, no telescope label, just a dark body moving through interstellar space, cold enough that sunlight from any star is only a memory. Its surface may have been altered by cosmic rays. Its ices may have been buried, exposed, trapped, fractured, or layered. Its chemistry may have formed in a disk around a young star, where dust grains collided, stuck, froze, melted, shattered, and gathered into the leftovers of a planetary system. At some point, something violent happened. A planet may have scattered it. A giant world may have swung it outward. A close gravitational encounter may have given it enough energy to escape its star. Young planetary systems are not peaceful gardens. They are construction zones. Bodies collide. Debris is thrown. Planets are built by keeping some material and rejecting much more. 3I Atlas may be one of those rejected fragments, a piece of another system's unfinished architecture. It crossed space without purpose. It was not searching for us. It was not aimed at Earth. It did not carry a message. It did not glow. It did not transmit. It moved through darkness until our sun became the next powerful object in its path. Then the physics changed. Sunlight began to matter. Heat reached the surface. Volatile ices began to respond. Material that had slept in deep cold started to escape. Gas flowed outward. Dust was lifted and dragged into space. Around the small nucleus a fuzzy cloud formed. That cloud is called a coma, and it is one of the most important pieces of evidence in this entire story. A coma is not a failure of imagination. It is physical material. It is a comet confessing what it is. When people look at a processed telescope image and see a smudge, they may think the image is hiding something. But for comet scientists, the smudge is the thing to study. The nucleus of a comet can be tiny and hard to see directly, especially when wrapped in its own gas and dust. The coma is not meaningless blur. It is material escaping from the object, and that material can be analyzed. It can carry chemical fingerprints. It can reveal what ices are active. It can show how sunlight is driving change. A coma is not a cloak over a spaceship. A coma is the comet becoming readable. That is where many online claims lose contact with reality. A blurry image is treated as suspicious. A tail is treated as a possible engine plume. A faint asymmetry is treated as structure. A chemical anomaly is treated as design. But telescope images are not ordinary photographs. They are built from exposure time, tracking, filters, processing, viewing geometry, and instrument limits. Stars may streak if the telescope follows the moving object. A tail can look different depending on where Earth, the Sun, and the comet are. Dust and gas can create shapes that are easy to misread if someone wants to see hardware. The human brain is a pattern-hunting animal. Space images are full of traps for it. A shadow becomes a hull. A streak becomes a beam. A cloud becomes a structure. A natural tail becomes exhaust. That instinct is powerful, but astronomy cannot run on instinct. It has to run on measurement. Measurement is slower than speculation. It is less theatrical in the moment. It asks annoying questions. What wavelength was used? What is the exposure time? Was the telescope tracking the object or the background stars? Is the feature dust or gas? Is the apparent direction a projection effect? How does it change over time? Does the feature point away from the sun? Does it follow known cometary behavior? Can multiple instruments see the same thing? The alien ship story does not like those questions because they take away the fog it needs. The comet story welcomes them. The more measurements came in for 3I Atlas, the more its natural identity strengthened. Observations showed a comet-like coma and tail. Spacecraft and telescopes caught its activity from different perspectives. Infrared instruments detected dust and molecules. Sub-millimeter observations revealed chemical signatures. The object was not a single rumor. It became a dossier. That dossier did not say ship, it said comet, a strange comet, yes, an interstellar comet, yes, a chemical treasure, yes, but the orbit is the backbone of the story. 3 Atlas follows a path that is not closed around the sun. It is moving too fast to be one of the sun's long-term objects. The sun bends the path but does not capture it. This is what a hyperbolic trajectory means. It is the geometry of a visitor passing through, not returning. The object comes in from interstellar space, falls inward, accelerates near the sun, curves, and exits. That sounds dramatic because it is dramatic, but dramatic does not mean directed. A hyperbolic orbit is not a flight plan. It is what happens when an object arrives with enough Shinji to escape. If someone wants to imagine a mission from that curve, they can. The mind can attach intention to any path, but the orbit itself does not require intention. It requires gravity and speed. This is a place where language can mislead us. We say the object system. We say it visited. We say it came from another star. Those phrases make it sound almost social, as if the object crossed a border with awareness. But the comet did not know the border. It did not choose the sun. It did not plan a route through the planets. It simply followed a trajectory shaped by past encounters and present gravity. That should make the story colder. It also makes it larger. The universe is full of events that happen without us and still reach us. A photon from a distant galaxy does not intend to tell us about the early universe. A meteorite does not intend to reveal the history of the solar system. A comet does not intend to preserve chemistry. Meaning is something we recover from matter. We are not always being spoken to. Often, we are learning to read what was never written for us. 3I Atlas is like that. It is not a message. It is a record. That record is especially valuable because it is not from here. For most of human, the solar system was the only planetary system we could study in detail. The planets around the sun were our sample. The comets around the sun were our sample. The asteroids, meteorites, moons, and dust of this system became the evidence from which we built our theories of planet formation. Then exoplanets changed the scale of the problem. We discovered that planets are everywhere, and that many planetary systems do not look like ours. Giant planets can orbit close to their stars. Small worlds can be packed into tight systems. Planets can circle dwarfs, binary stars, and stars in our galaxy became full of planetary architecture we had not expected. But exoplanets are usually far away. We detect them indirectly. A dip in starlight, a wobble filtered through an atmosphere, a faint image separated from a bright star. We infer, model, and compare. We do not pick up pieces of those systems and hold them in the laboratory. Interstellar comets change the relationship. They are not planets, but they are leftover planetary's material. They are debris from the same process that builds worlds. When such an object passes through our system, it brings matter from another system into observational reach, not reach in the sense of landing on it, at least not yet, but reach in the sense of measuring its coma, its dust, its gas, its chemistry, its response to sunlight. A comet from another star is a sample we did not launch a mission to collect. It delivered itself. That is why the chemical measurements matter so much. ALMA observations found that 3 Atlas was unusually rich in methanol compared with hydrogen cyanide. Methanol is an organic molecule, but that word must be handled carefully. Organic does not mean living. It does not mean biological. It does not mean carbon-bearing molecules form naturally in space. They exist in interstellar clouds, cometary ices, planet-forming regions, and cold cosmic environments where no one is assembling machines. Methanol in the coma is not a fuel tank confession, it is chemistry. And chemistry is exactly what we should want from an interstellar comet. A methanol-rich coma can tell us about formation conditions. It can suggest that the object formed in a cold environment where certain molecules were trapped or preserved. It can reflect processing by radiation, the composition of icy grains, or the temperature history of the material. It can differ from many solar system comets without becoming artificial. That last sentence is critical. Different does not mean designed. The object may also show a carbon dioxide-rich coma. Carbon dioxide can drive activity at distances from the sun where water ice is less active. Water, carbon monoxide, carbonyl sulfide, water ice dust and other species have been discussed in These are not signs of engineering. They are the chemical vocabulary of volatile rich bodies. They help astronomers understand what the comet is releasing as it warms. If a comet born in our own system can have complex chemistry, why would a comet from another system have to be simple? The opposite should be true. A foreign comet should expand the range of what we expect. It should challenge the assumption that solar system comets define the full menu. If other planetary systems have different histories, different disk temperatures, different radiation environments, and different giant planets, their ejected comets may carry different chemical signatures. That is not a loophole for aliens. It is a reason to study them. The alien ship fantasy and inflates it one real detail and inflates it beyond recognition. Methanol becomes suspicious. Carbon dioxide becomes suspicious. A tail becomes suspicious. A trajectory becomes suspicious. But suspicion is not analysis. A serious claim has to show why the natural explanation fails. For 3I Atlas, the natural explanation does not fail. It has work to do. It has details to refine. It has chemical puzzles. But it is not collapsing. It is doing what good scientific explanations do. Organizing the evidence into a physical picture. An icy object from another planetary system entered the solar system. Sunlight warmed it. Volatile material escaped. A coma and tail formed. Telescopes detected gas, dust, and molecules. The orbit showed it was not bound to the sun. The chemistry suggested a formation history different from many familiar comets. That picture is coherent. A spaceship pretending to be that picture is possible only in the loose sense that a story can always be invented. It is not where the evidence leads. There is a difference between possibility and support. This difference is where many viral claims live. They do not say, "Here is decisive evidence." They say, "Can you prove it is not?" That question sounds open-minded, but it reverses the burden. If someone claims 3I Atlas is alien technology, they have to produce evidence for alien technology. Scientists do not have to disprove every imagined machine hidden inside every cometary cloud. Otherwise, no natural object would ever be safe from fantasy. Can you prove a meteor is not a disguised probe? Can you prove a comet is not hiding engine? Can you prove an asteroid is not an ancient relic? Can you prove a dust tail is not intentional camouflage? The answer is that science does not work by disproving every unfalsifiable invention. It works by asking which explanation is supported by observations, which makes testable predictions, which fits known physics, and which requires the fewest hidden assumptions. The comet explanation wins that contest. The alien ship explanation survives mainly by becoming untestable. If there is no signal, it is stealth. If there is a coma, it is disguise. If there is a tail, it is decoy exhaust. If the chemistry is natural, it is engineered to look natural. If scientists disagree with the claim, they are hiding something. If new data supports comet behavior, the camouflage is better than expected. A claim that cannot lose cannot really win. It becomes narrative armor. That is not a serious way to search for extraterrestrial intelligence. A serious search has standards. It asks for signals, structures, patterns, materials, or behavior that cannot be explained by known natural processes. It does not weaken the word evidence until every object from outside the solar system becomes a candidate spacecraft by default. The universe may contain alien technology. 3I Atlas has not shown it. Those two statements can stand together. We do not have to pretend aliens are impossible. We only have to say that this object does not provide evidence for them. That is not cynicism. It is proportion. The size of the claim must match the strength of the evidence. An interstellar comet requires good observations. An alien spacecraft requires extraordinary ones. 3 Atlas gives us good observations of a comet. It does not give us extraordinary evidence of a machine. The deeper issue is emotional. People are not only asking about 3I Atlas. They are asking whether the universe is empty of mind. They are asking whether intelligence can cross the darkness. They are asking whether the silence might break. When the answer is, this one is a comet, it can feel like a door closing. But the door that closes is not the only one. Another opens. A comet from another star system is not an answer to whether we are alone. It is an answer to another question. Are planetary systems physically connected by wandering debris? Yes, at least sometimes. Material formed elsewhere can enter our neighborhood. It can carry chemistry from another environment. It can become visible to our instruments. It can reveal that the space between stars is not a sterile void but a corridor crossed by fragments, dust, ice, and relics of world building. That is a profound connection. It is not social contact, it is material contact. The solar system is not sealed. That idea should shake us more than it does. We often imagine star systems as islands separated by impossible oceans. Each star with its own planets, moons, comets, asteroids, and dust locked inside its own gravitational story. But interstellar objects break that image. They show that systems leak, they eject, they scatter fragments into the galaxy. Some of those fragments pass through other systems. A body born around one star can be heated by another. 3I Atlas is a piece of that exchange, not exchange by intention, exchange by violence and chance. This is where the story becomes more beautiful than a simple debunking. A debunking would stop at not aliens, that is too small. It leaves the audience with absence. The better story has a positive center. 3I Atlas may be a chemical messenger from another planetary system. It is not carrying a message written by intelligence, but it carries information written by formation conditions, ice chemistry, radiation, ejection and time. The comet is not talking, its molecules are. There is a kind of poetry in that. But it is not fake poetry, please. From the science itself. Comets release gases when warmed, those gases absorb and emit light. Instruments detect those fingerprints. The coma becomes a temporary translation layer between the nucleus and our telescopes. A body we cannot touch tells us what it contains by losing material in the sun. The sun burns the archive open. For a short time, we can read the smoke, then it leaves. This short window matters. Interstellar objects do not wait. A bound comet may come back. A planet can be studied again and again. An interstellar visitor gives us one passage. The observational campaign has to happen quickly. Surveys detect it. The Minor Planet Center receives data. Follow-up telescopes refine the orbit. Space missions that were never built for this object are turned toward it. Instruments squeeze information out of faint light while the geometry changes and the object moves away. There is tension in that race, not the false tension of an invasion, the real tension of a vanishing opportunity. The object will not stay for our convenience. It will not slow down because our instruments need more time. It is crossing the solar system on its own path, and the science must chase. That chase produced a remarkable observing campaign. Hubble imaged the object and helped constrain its nucleus size, even though the coma complicated direct measurement. Mars spacecraft saw it from the vicinity of another planet. Missions like Lucy and Psyche contributed observations of its coma and tail. Solar observatories watched it near the sun when Earth's view was difficult. Infrared and sub-millimeter facilities studied its dust and molecules. ESA spacecraft joined the effort. The solar system's machines briefly became witnesses to a body from beyond the solar system. This is exactly what should happen when something rare appears. Not secrecy, attention. The fact that the results point to a comet is not disappointing. It is evidence that the scientific system worked. It saw a strange object, measured its path, classified its origin, observed its activity, studied its chemistry and compared interpretations. The alien ship story often paints that process as evasive. When scientists say comet, the story becomes they refuse to admit. When astronomers mention uncertainty, the story becomes they are baffled. When new chemistry appears, the story becomes the official explanation is collapsing. This style is effective because it turns every normal part of science into drama. But it is dishonest. Scientists can be uncertain about details while confident about the broad category. You can know a patient has a fever without knowing the exact infection at the doorway. You can know smoke comes from combustion without knowing the precise fuel mixture. You can know an object is an active comet while still investigating its chemical oddities. Uncertainty inside a framework is not evidence against the framework. 3. Atlas is an active interstellar comet with unusual properties worth studying. That sentence is strong enough. It does not need to become therefore spaceship. The word unusual must be protected. It is one of the most valuable words in science. Unusual objects teach us. They expose the limits of old models. They force new comparisons. They reveal diversity. But unusual is not a synonym for artificial. If every unusual observation is hijacked by alien claims, then real anomalies stop being useful. They become props in a story that always ends the same way. The correct response to an unusual comet is not to imagine a hidden engineer. It is to ask what kind of natural history produced it. Why so much methanol? Why that relationship with hydrogen cyanide? Why a carbon dioxide-rich coma? Why activity at that distance? Why this dust behavior? Why this nucleus size range? Why this path? Why this object now? Those questions lead somewhere. They generate observations, models, and future tests. The ship claim without evidence mostly circles back to itself. That is the difference between a mystery that can grow and a claim that can only repeat. There is another layer to the public reaction. People have learned to distrust clean answers. Some of that distrust is earned by history. Institutions have made mistakes. Governments have hidden things. Scientists revised conclusions. Agencies have communicated badly and irrational for the public to ask hard questions. But suspicion is not a method by itself. Suspicion can open a door. It cannot measure methanol. It cannot calculate an orbit. It cannot map a coma. It cannot distinguish dust from metal. It cannot tell whether a trajectory is hyperbolic because of interstellar origin or because of propulsion. Suspicion asks, what if they are wrong? Science has to answer, what would the evidence look like if they were? That is where the alien ship claim remains weak. It does not provide a better physical model. It does not predict observed gas production better. It does not explain the coma better. It does not explain the tail better. It does not explain the molecular detections better. It adds intent where physics is sufficient. If a claim adds a hidden civilization but does not improve the explanation, it is not stronger, it is heavier. The spacecraft hypothesis is not impossible in the abstract, but for 3I Atlas it is unnecessary. That word is devastating. A scientific explanation does not have to be emotionally satisfying to be right. It has to account for what is observed. The comet interpretation does that with known processes. The alien interpretation requires extra assumptions without delivering extra explanatory power. That is why the evidence should be allowed to win. The strongest version of this story does not mock people for asking whether interstellar objects could ever be artificial. A serious civilization should ask that. Human-made spacecraft are already leaving the solar system. Voyager is in interstellar space. Pioneer, New Horizons, and other spacecraft move outward. If human technology can send artifacts beyond the planets, another civilization could in principle do more. The search for extraterrestrial technology is not nonsense, but serious searching requires serious standards. A real technosignature must be more than weirdness. It must be a pattern, signal, structure, chemistry, heat, motion, or behavior that resists natural explanation. It must become stronger under scrutiny, not vaguer. It must survive alternative explanations. It must let independent observers test it. It must not depend on turning every comet feature into disguise. 3I Atlas does not meet that standard, it meets another standard. A rare interstellar comet worthy of intense study. That is enough. The phrase "not a ship" should not be the end of the conversation. It should be the clearing of smoke. Once the ship silhouette is crossed out, the real object can finally be seen. A small icy nucleus, perhaps hundreds of meters to several kilometers across, wrapped in gas and dust, a coma brightening as sunlight reaches volatile material, a tail shaped by radiation and solar wind, a hyperbolic path from outside the solar system, a chemical inventory with unusual methanol enrichment, a carbon dioxide-rich activity profile, water, dust, organic molecules, and icy grains, a temporary passage through our planetary neighborhood, a one-way departure. That is not nothing. That is a cosmic event. The challenge is that a cosmic event does not always look cinematic through a telescope. It may look like a faint dot. The drama is not in the image alone. It is in the interpretation. A small smudge can be more important than a beautiful nebula if it carries the right history. A moving point can matter more than a colorful galaxy image if it is not from here. Astronomy often asks us to feel scale through data. 3 Atlas is one of those cases. The object itself may not fill the frame like a planet, but its path crosses a boundary that matters. It connects our solar system to the population of material drifting between stars. It gives us a chemical sample of a foreign origin. It reminds us that the galaxy is not only stars and planets, but debris, leftovers, exiles, and fragments moving in silence. That should feel vast. The alien ship version narrows the story into a single dramatic possibility. The comet version widens it into a galactic process. Every planetary system making away objects like this. Young stars form disks. Disks build planets. Planets scatter leftovers. Some leftovers remain as comets and asteroids, others escape. Across billions of years, the galaxy may fill with these small dark travelers. Most will never pass close to a star again, most will never be seen. A few will cross the wrong or right place at the right time and become visible. 3i Atlas is not a lone miracle, it may be a visible member of an invisible population. That idea changes the emotional weight. The object is not simply a rare oddity, it is evidence that our instruments are beginning to detect a hidden class of bodies. Today we know 3 confirmed interstellar objects. Tomorrow, with better surveys, we may know dozens, then hundreds. Their variety may become a new map of planetary formation. Some may be rich in water, some in carbon monoxide, some in organics, some may be inactive, some may fragment, some may look like comets, some may look like bare rocks. Together, they may tell us how planetary systems across the galaxy make and lose material. A spacecraft claim would make 3i Atlas singular, a comet population makes it part of a field. The field is more important. There is a quiet arrogance in thinking the most interesting thing an interstellar object could be is a machine. That is a human bias. We build machines, so we value machines. We imagine intelligence as the peak of significance. But matter has histories that are not less real because no one designed them. A comet carries the conditions of its origin in the composition of its ice. It carries the violence of ejection in its trajectory. It carries the effects of cosmic rays in its surface. It carries the response to a new star in its coma. Those are not thoughts, they are records. A mature science story knows how to honor records. The temptation to turn the comet into a starship is partly a refusal to accept an indifferent universe. A ship would mean someone chose this path. A comet means the path happened. A ship would make us part of someone's plan. A comet makes us observers of a process that never needed us. That can feel cold, but cold is not empty. The cosmic cold preserves things. It preserves ice, it preserves molecules, it preserves histories that would be erased closer to stars. The interstellar dark may have kept 3 Atlas relatively unchanged for long spans, until the sun woke it and began stripping it open. The object's indifference is exactly what makes it valuable. It was not shaped to impress us. It is not a performance. It is matter surviving its own journey. There is power in that. A ship would be evidence of mind. A comet is evidence of worlds. Not worlds in the sense of planets with landscapes maybe, but worlds in formation. Disk is, grains, collisions, gravity, and the rough economy of young systems. It tells us that other stars produce leftovers, and some leftovers escape. That is a physical connection between the sun and the rest of the galaxy. No signal required. The strongest emotional turn in this story comes when the viewer realizes that the alien fantasy was actually limiting the object. It forced 3i Atlas into the shape of a human story. Someone built something and sent it here. The scientific story lets the object remain alien in a deeper sense. It is not human-like. It is not purposeful. It is not designed. It is a stranger because it has no reason to care. And yet it can still be understood. That is the strange bargain of science. We do not need the universe to care about us in order to learn from it. We only need enough light, enough time, enough instrument, and enough honesty not to replace the data with our wishes. 3i Atlas tests that honesty. When a measurement appears unusual, what do we do? When a public figure speculates, what do we do? When a thumbnail promises aliens, what do we do? When a telescope image looks strange, what do we do? We can let the excitement drag us into a story that was written before the data arrived. Or we can stay with the object long enough for it to become more interesting than the rumor. The object rewards patience. Patience reveals the comet reveals the chemistry reveals the possibility of another birthplace. The birthplace opens the galaxy. That chain is better than a shortcut. It is not as fast as alien ship. It does not explode instantly, but it builds. There is a reason good astronomy often feels like detective work. The evidence is indirect, the body is distant, the scene is changing, the culprit is time, the clues are light, motion, and chemistry. With 3i Atlas, the investigation begins with the orbit. The path is open, the object does not belong to the sun, then the S moves to activity, a coma and tail appear, then composition, gas and dust reveal molecules, then comparison. How does this object differ from Oumuamua and Borisov? How does it differ from solar system comets, then origin? What kind of system could make such material? This is not a list in a classroom, it is a tightening net. Each observation removes a little fog. Each measurement makes some stories stronger and others weaker. The alien ship story begins with emotional force, but it loses ground as the physical evidence accumulates. The comet story begins as a classification, but it gains depth as the chemistry comes in. That is how the script should feel. The fantasy shrinking, the real object growing. The viewer should begin with the silhouette of a ship. By the end, they should see ice. And the ice should feel more powerful. A piece of ice from another star system is not ordinary ice. It may contain molecules frozen under conditions we can only infer. It may include grains that formed before its star fully settled. It may have trapped volatile compounds in a disk unlike ours. It may have been altered by radiation while drifting between stars. When it releases material near the sun, it gives us a temporary chemical sample. That sample may be messy, processed and hard to interpret, but it is real. An alien ship would be a single object. A chemical sample from another system touches the question of how common our own ingredients are. That matters for astrobiology too if handled carefully. Organic molecules in comets do not mean life. They do not mean biology. They do not mean a living world. But they are part of the broader story of chemical complexity in space. If interstellar comets carry carbon-rich molecules and volatile ices between systems, they become part of the galactic distribution of prebiotic material. That does not prove panspermia. It does not prove life travels between stars. It only shows that chemistry is mobile, that small bodies can move, and that the ingredients of complexity may not be confined to one system. That is already important. Do not inflate it. Do not flatten it, hold it correctly. This is the entire discipline of the script. Hold things correctly. Do not turn chemistry into aliens. Do not turn skepticism into boredom. Do not turn curiosity into gullibility. Do not turn evidence into a weapon against wonder. Let each claim carry only the weight it can carry. 3I Atlas can carry the weight of being an interstellar comet. It can carry the weight of being chemically unusual. It can carry the weight of being a rare natural messenger. It cannot carry the weight of being alien technology, not on current evidence. That phrase matters. Current evidence. It is precise. It does not pretend the future cannot surprise us. It does not pretend science is complete. It does not pretend every measurement is perfect. It simply says what the evidence supports now. A serious narrator can say that without sounding timid. The evidence supports an interstellar comet. Say it cleanly, then make the comet magnificent. The alien ship story often borrows the language of courage. It frames itself as daring, open-minded, willing to think beyond the official line. But there is another kind of courage. The courage to disappoint the fantasy and stay with the harder truth. The harder truth is that the universe may not answer our loneliness with a signal. It may answer with a cold object passing through, leaving only dust and gas behind. That answer is not comforting. It is beautiful in a different register. It says the galaxy is active. Systems form, eject, exchange, and illuminate. It says the dark between stars is not only distance but memory. It says the sun can briefly awaken matter from elsewhere. It says we are capable of recognizing a foreign object not by its intent but by its motion. Motion is where the story began. A moving point. A path that would not close. A speed that did not belong. That was the clue that made 3I Atlas more than another comet. If it had been bound to the sun, it would still be interesting but not in the same way. The hyperbolic trajectory is the passport stamp. It tells us the object is passing through, not returning home. The word home becomes strange here. For solar system comets, home is complicated. A comet may spend most of its time far from the sun, then return. But it is still ours in a gravitational sense. 3 Atlas has no home here. Its home, if that word has meaning, is somewhere lost behind its path. Perhaps its birth system cannot be identified. Perhaps gravitational encounters over immense time have erased the trail. The object itself may be the only surviving clue we get. That makes its chemistry even more important. If we cannot know the exact star, we can still know something about the environment. The molecules: hadrous, methanol, hydrogen cyanide, carbon dioxide, water, dust, icy grains, organic carbon features. Each clue is incomplete. Together, they form a physical portrait, not a portrait of a civilization, a portrait of formation. A public obsessed with aliens sometimes underestimates how radical formation science can be. To know how worlds are built is to know something about the conditions that eventually make atmospheres, oceans, surfaces, and perhaps life possible. Comets are not planets, but they belong to the supply chain of worlds. They carry volatiles, they move material, they collide, they preserve, they deliver, they eject. An interstellar comet lets us compare that supply chain across systems. That is a big story. It touches the origin of planets, water, organics, and the diversity of cosmic chemistry. It does not require a cockpit. The phrase chemical messenger is useful, but it must be used carefully. 3i Atlas is not a messenger in the intentional sense. It did not bring a message for us. It is a messenger only because we can interpret it. Like a shard of pottery found in the ground, it does not speak, but it tells a story through material. Like ash from an eruption, it does not explain itself, but it carries conditions of the event. Like a meteorite, it did not choose to inform us, but it informs. The comet is an accidental messenger. That accident is the beauty. A deliberate message would make us special. An accidental messenger makes the universe legible. There is humility in that, and good documentary writing needs humility. Not a shrinking tone, not a lecture, but a recognition that the object belongs to a scale larger than human drama. The internet argument is loud, but the comet itself is silent. It moves, it warms, it sheds, it leaves. Around that silence, humans argue about aliens, cover-ups, evidence, and wonder. The object does not respond. That silence should be in the film. The narration should let it breathe. The dark object moving, the sun growing, the coma forming, the human noise rising, the data arriving, the ship fantasy collapsing, the comet remaining. What remains is enough. When the alien claim collapses, nothing has been lost except a weak story. The stronger story stands there in the dark, an interstellar comet from another system. The third confirmed object of its kind, a body with a hyperbolic path, a cloud of gas and dust, a tail, unusual chemistry, a brief chance to study matter from beyond the sun. That is the spine. Everything else is interpretation. There is also a media lesson here. Modern audiences are trained to expect revelation. A title promises that scientists are shocked. A thumbnail promises that NASA is hiding something. A narrator promises that everything we know is wrong. Then the actual science is often more careful, more partial, more interesting, and less explosive. The gap between hype and evidence creates fatigue. People begin to believe either everything is a cover-up or everything is boring. Both reactions are bad. 3 Atlas offers a better model. Make the evidence dramatic without lying. The title can be sharp, the thumbnail can be confrontational, the script can have pressure, the alien ship idea can be placed in the frame and crossed out. But the payoff must be real. The viewer should not feel tricked. They should feel reoriented. They clicked for the conflict, they stayed for the comet. That is ethical drama. The conflict is not fake. It is real because the public imagination genuinely pulled toward aliens, and the evidence genuinely pulled toward a comet. The emotional stakes are real because people want the universe to contain intelligence. The scientific stakes are real because interstellar comets can reveal planetary chemistry. The correction is real because weak evidence can spread quickly and contaminate public understanding. A strong video does not need false facts. It needs the courage to make true facts feel alive. The most alive part of 3i Atlas may be its tail, though the comet itself is not alive. A tail is motion made visible. It shows material to being carried away, shaped by forces. In a still image, it can look like an arrow. In reality, it is a dynamic structure changing with solar distance, outgassing, dust size, radiation pressure, and viewing angle. It tells us the object is not inert. That activity separates 3 Atlas from the public memory of Oumuamua. Oumuamua was mysterious partly because it did not show obvious comet activity. 3i Atlas shows the cometary signs more clearly. Its mystery is not whether it can be forced into the shape of a machine. Its mystery is what kind of comet it is and what system made it. That should be the correction to the Oumuamua hangover. Not every interstellar object is the same. We should not drag one object's uncertainties onto another. 3 Atlas must be judged by its own evidence. Boris must be judged by its own evidence. Oumuamua remains puzzling in some ways because the data were limited. The category of interstellar objects is not a single mystery but a collection of cases. Science grows by separating them, not blending them into one alien narrative. The alien narrative loves blending. It says, this one was weird, that one is weird, therefore maybe all of them are probes. But that flattens the differences. Oumuamua was inactive looking in available data. Borisov was active and comet-like. 3i Atlas is active and chemically rich. Those distinctions matter. They tell us the population may be diverse. Diversity is not proof of technology. It is proof that reality is bigger than the narrow sample we started with. A mature viewer can hold that. A mature script should trust them. It should not over-explain like a textbook. It should build scenes. The discovery scene. The survey catches a moving object. The orbit refuses to close. The word interstellar appears. The public scene. The online imagination wakes. The Chevry anomaly becomes fuel. The evidence scene, coma, tail, outgassing, dust, gas, molecules, instruments. The comparison scene. Oumuamua's ambiguity, Borisov's commentary. 3. Atlas's chemical richness, the deepest another planetary system, ejection, interstellar travel, sunlight waking ancient ice. The final scene, the object leaves, the fantasy fades, the data remains. Those are not chapter labels. They are movements in a continuous narration. The viewer should feel the story shifting without being told that a new section has begun. That is how the voice stays documentary rather than lecture. The opening should be sharp, and it is. An object enters, the internet wants a spaceship. The next movement should slow the camera down. A name, a trajectory, a trajectory. The emotional jump. Then the counterweight, evidence. The script should not rush into facts too quickly. It should let the viewer feel why the fantasy is tempting, because only then does the correction feel earned. If you correct too soon, the viewer feels scolded. If you correct too late, the fantasy takes over. The balance is tension. A good line is not, "People are stupid for thinking aliens." A better line is, "The desire for aliens is human, but desire cannot calculate an orbit." That line holds respect and firmness together. Another strong line, "The universe is allowed to be strange without being artificial." That is the entire theme. It can return near the end in a different form. Wonder is not weakened by evidence. Wonder is rescued by it. Those lines should not sound like slogans if they are embedded in the story. They should feel like conclusions the evidence forced. The evidence is rich enough. The orbital evidence says the object is interstellar. The activity evidence says it is cometary. The chemical evidence says it may have formed under conditions different from many known comets. The absence of artificial evidence says the ship claim is unsupported. That last point is important. Lack of evidence is not always evidence of absence, but when a claim predicts or requires features that are not observed, the absence matters. If someone says an object is a spacecraft, it is reasonable to look for signals, structure, maneuvers, thermal anomalies, materials, or behavior inconsistent with natural processes. When those are not found and cometary processes are found instead, the spacecraft claim weakens. That is not closed-minded. It is how evidence works. There is a subtle trap in saying, "We cannot rule it out completely." Of course, we cannot rule out every imagined possibility completely. But public communication often treats that phrase as if it gives speculation equal status. It does not. We cannot rule out countless bizarre possibilities for many objects. That does not mean they are worth centering. A responsible narration can say, "There is no current evidence that 3I Atlas is alien technology. The evidence we do have points to an interstellar comet." That is clear and fair, no mockery, no false certainty, no loophole inflated into drama. The science can then deepen. The nucleus size range matters because it shows the limits of observation. Hubble helped constrain the nucleus, but the coma makes direct measurement difficult. That is normal for active comets. A tiny solid body can produce a much larger visible cloud. The visible object is not the nucleus alone. It is the nucleus plus its environment. This matters because people sometimes imagine that if the object looks large or fuzzy, it must be unusual in a technological way. But cometary coma can be vast compared with their nuclei. Small body, big cloud. That is comet physics. The object's brightness also evolves. As it approaches the sun, activity can increase. As it recedes, activity can change again. Different volatiles dominate at different distances. Carbon dioxide can drive activity farther out. Water becomes more active closer in. Dust release depends on gas flow, surface structure, and grain properties. A comet is not a static stone. It is a changing system. A changing object can look mysterious if you expect rocks to behave like rocks. Comets do not. They wake. That word is useful. It is not literally alive, but it captures the visual truth. A comet wakes under sunlight. 3I Atlas woke under a star that did not form it. That is a beautiful sentence because it captures the interstellar nature. A body born elsewhere being activated by our sun. The sun becomes an interrogator. Heat asks the question. Gas answers, "What are you made of?" The comet answers by losing itself. That is the strongest poetic scientific image in the piece. The object is studied through its erosion. A spacecraft tries to preserve itself. A comet reveals itself by coming apart at the surface. This contrast is powerful. It should be used carefully, not overdone. The point is not that a spacecraft could never shed material, but that the observed behavior naturally fits a comet. The comet is physically expected to produce a coma and tail. A spacecraft would require additional assumptions to explain why it is producing those same signatures without leaving stronger artificial signs. The simplest explanation is not always right. But here the natural explanation is not merely simple. It is scored beats exciting every time. This is not a war against imagination. It is a war against premature certainty. Imagination is needed to model other planetary systems, to picture formation environments, to design missions, to think about unseen populations of interstellar bodies. Science without imagination becomes mechanical. But imagination without discipline becomes rumor. 3i Atlas sits between those failures. It asks us to imagine boldly and measure carefully. Imagine the birthplace. A cold disk around another star, dust and gas swirling, ices forming on grains, molecules trapped, planetesimals growing in darkness. A young giant planet moving through the disk like a gravitational predator. Small bodies scatter, some inward, some outward, some into collision, some into escape. One fragment receives enough energy to leave forever. It travels for ages. Nothing happens except time and radiation. Cosmic rays alter the surface. The body tumbles or spins. It crosses regions of space with no strong heat. Its interior preserves older material. It becomes one of countless dark objects between stars. Then our sun grows brighter ahead. The object is not coming to Earth. It is not coming to Mars. It is not coming to deliver a message. The sun is simply in the way. Gravity bends the path. Heat reaches the surface. Frozen volatiles begin to escape. The object becomes visible because it starts losing material. Human instruments notice. That is the story. No pilot improves it. The lack of a pilot may actually make it stranger. A pilot would make the trajectory intentional, and intention is familiar. A natural interstellar comet has no such comfort. It is a product of processes that dwarf us: star formation, planet building, gravitational scattering, galactic motion. It is not part of a conversation. It is part of a system. Human beings often prefer conversation because it gives us a role. Science sometimes gives us something more humbling. No role, but a view. 3i Atlas gives us a view, a temporary one. The object's departure should haunt the whole narration. It is not here to be revisited. It will fade. The data window closes. That creates urgency without fake danger. The object does not threaten Earth, but the opportunity is perishable. Every day, geometry changes. Every observation is a piece of a vanishing archive. The comet's passage is an event not because it endangers us, but because it will not repeat. That is a better kind of pressure. No apocalypse. A deadline for knowledge. The public often confuses pressure with danger. A good science film can show that urgency exists even when we are safe. A comet passing far from Earth can still be urgent if it carries information we may never get again. The stakes are not survival, they are understanding. Understanding is worth drama. That is another theme. The object's closest approach to Earth was not a threat. It remained far away. The public should not be frightened by impact scenarios. The danger here is not physical, it is interpretive. The danger is that weak evidence spreads faster than careful analysis. The danger is that a rare scientific event becomes another alien rumor. The danger is that people learn to treat every official correction as a cover-up and every anomaly as a machine. That kind of thinking does damage. It makes real science harder to communicate. It makes real techno-signature searches harder to take seriously. It creates a public environment where every strange object becomes content before it becomes understood. It encourages creators to reward the wildest interpretation rather than the strongest one. Atlas should push back against that, not by shaming viewers, by offering them a better story. The better story is built on evidence. It has conflict, it has mystery, it has cosmic scale. It has a public fantasy that must be confronted. It has a real object that becomes more interesting when seen correctly. It has a moral without becoming preachy. Do not trade real wonder for easy hype. That is the heart. There is a phrase that belongs near the end. The internet wanted a spaceship because a spaceship would mean the universe had noticed us. The comet is more unsettling because it means the universe does not have to notice us to reach us. That is strong because it reframes disappointment as depth. A spaceship would make us central, a comet makes us observant. There is dignity in being observant. The history of astronomy is full of moments when humans lost centrality and gained understanding. Earth was not the center. The sun was one star among many. The Milky Way was one galaxy among many. Planets were not unique to the sun. Organic molecules were not unique to Earth. Interstellar objects are now showing that even the material leftovers of planetary systems can cross boundaries. Each loss of centrality felt like a demotion to some people. Each became an expansion. 3i Atlas belongs to that tradition. It does not tell us we are being visited by minds. It tells us we live in a galaxy where material histories can pass through our neighborhood. It makes the solar system less isolated. It gives us a piece of elsewhere. That is an expansion. It may not satisfy the part of us that wants contact, but it satisfies a deeper scientific hunger. To know how the universe works beyond the examples closest to us, that hunger is older than the internet. It deserves better than clickbait. A strong narrator should almost sound protective of the comet. Not sentimental but protective of its reality. The object should not be forced to wear a costume. It should be allowed to be what it is. A dark, icy, active interstellar body with a path through the solar system and a chemistry worth studying. Let the comet be strange, let it be natural, let it be enough. The final departure scene can carry the emotional closure. 3I Atlas moves outward. The sun shrinks behind it. The coma weakens as the heat fades. The object becomes harder to detect. The public conversation moves on. The alien claims become old posts, old videos, old arguments, but the measurements remain in archives and papers. Astronomers compare, revise, model and wait. Somewhere else another interstellar object is already moving. Maybe it is dark and inactive. Maybe it is rich in carbon dioxide. Maybe it is coated in processed organics. Maybe it will pass too far away to see. Maybe it will be discovered early. Maybe it will look stranger than 3 Atlas. Maybe it will create another storm of speculation, and maybe someday, one object will truly challenge every natural model. If that happens, the world will need a scientific culture strong enough to recognize it. That culture cannot be built on weak claims, it has to be built on standards. It has to know the difference between anomaly and evidence, between curiosity and conclusion, between a comet and a craft. 3I Atlas helps teach that difference, not by being dull, by being magnificent in the right way. It is a visitor from another star system, but not a visitor with a mind. It is a messenger, but not one that meant to speak. It is alien material, but not alien technology. It is a comet, but not just a comet. The word just has no place here. There is no just in a body from another system entering ours, releasing gases under our sun, carrying chemical clues from a lost birthplace, and leaving forever. There is no just in an object that may help define a new population of interstellar comets. There is no just in ice that crossed the dark between stars. The alien ship fantasy is tempting because it gives us a face in the darkness. But 3I Atlas gives us something harder and perhaps more honest. The darkness itself is full of history. It does not need a face to matter. It does not need to look back. We look, that is enough to begin. A telescope catches a speck. The orbit opens. The coma forms. The chemistry speaks. The rumor rises. The evidence answers. The ship fades. The comet remains. And the comet is the real miracle. Not because it was sent. Because it was not. Not because it proves someone is out there. Because it proves something from out there can reach us. Not because it was built. Because it was born, frozen, expelled, darkened, awakened, and briefly read by a species still learning how to separate wonder from wish. 3I Atlas is not an alien ship. That is not the end of the story. That is the moment the real story finally becomes visible.